friends, welcome to Viewpoint from Overseas. This is your host, Misbah Azam. Today I have a very distinguished guest with me. He is a public intellectual in Pakistan. He is a famous media anchor person and a journalist, known journalist. He writes in different newspapers. And of course, he has his own television programs, one in English and one in Urdu from the Pakistan Television Corporation. So I have with me my friend, Mr. Farrukh Pitafi. Hello, Farrukh. How are you doing today?
Never better, sir. Thank you very much. I hope you are fine as well.
Very good. I'm doing very good. Farrukh, let us start from Pakistan situation, what is happening at this moment, this morning, actually for me it's evening. When I turn on the televisions, I start seeing that there is some operation going on. How you see that?
Well, sir, this is a very simple issue here. There are protesters who are demanding that the federal law minister should step down because, there is a law in this country about finality of prophethood. And any lawyer, any lawmaker who doesn't conform to it should be declared non-Muslim. So recently there were some changes in the law, and what happened is that after protest the government had to actually reverse its position. Now these protesters are sitting in Islamabad demanding that the federal minister, about whom they have assumed that he is responsible for this amendment of this slight change, should step aside. The government has been trying to convince them to, leave the premises because they are trying. They have been choking the transportation in the federal capital. But now, finally, after the Supreme Court of Pakistan and the Islamabad High Court have pushed the government has started this operation. So far, it isn't going that well.
So when you say it isn't going that well, what do you mean by that? Because see, there is news that probably it is spreading to Karachi and Lahore and some places in Punjab. That's why you are saying not going very well, or even in Islamabad it is not going very well as well?
So far, even in Islamabad, it is not going very well. An FC, a soldier and a policeman have been killed so far. And when you talk about the protests, yes, protests are spreading to other parts of the country as well. For example, we know that the main artery that connects Lahore to Islamabad, that is GD Road, the protesters have, in Lahore, they have moved to block GD Road as well. And then, of course, in Karachi, the biggest city in the country, there are protests that have actually cut off communication from various areas. So yes, at this moment the protest is spreading as well. But when you look at the circumstances, when you look at the situation here in Islamabad on ground, even that isn't that much, compelling or that much heartening at this point.
So why you think it has happened? Do you think that government was not fully prepared and launched the operation, or it is just something happened, they were not ready for it, or some sort of surprise they see over there?
Well, this is astounding, Dr. Saab. And now when you ask this question, I'm also thinking about it because for past 2 weeks, we have been repeatedly hearing that there are, miscreants hiding as protesters sitting in this sit-in, and that whenever the government is going to take action, they are going to come out and start attacking also. But astounding, despite that, you have seen the quality of preparation so far. You have seen the quality of the action as well. So it can be a capacity issue, or it might have to do with lack of imagination rather than preparedness or knowledge.
So, Farrukh, just please try to teach my audience here. From the day one when Nawaz Sharif's government came in power, we have been seeing these troubles, one after the other. Dharna 1, lockdown, Dharna 2, countrywide protest, then Panama case becomes so huge, and then finally we see this, and as you say that it is not even, government is unable to control so far, it seems. What is going on in Pakistan? Is there, what Nawaz Sharif is saying about being, all these things controlled by quote-unquote forces, hidden forces? How do you see all that happening there? What is going on there, really?
Well, that, Dr. Saab, is a $1,000,000 question. Because so far what we have seen is there were forces who are not ready to cooperate with Nawaz Sharif when he took over. Imran Khan, the leader of Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, happens to be the head of such forces. He has been quite visible as well. But the protests, and this kind of agitation started even before the election. If you remember in 2013, early 2013, Tahir Qadri came to Islamabad, sat here in a similar fashion, paralyzing the city for quite some time. And the purpose was to offstage the elections, to delay the elections so that Nawaz Sharif, who was at that time looking like a certainty, doesn't become the Prime Minister of Pakistan. But despite that, the elections returned Nawaz Sharif to power for a third time. So far, what we have seen that people who keep on conspiring, trying to push him out of power, and apparently they have succeeded as well, because Nawaz Sharif was disqualified by a court a couple of months ago. But apart from that, Dr. Saab, when you talk to Nawaz Sharif, he thinks that there are forces that are not allowing him to actually finish his job, that is to serve the people. And one reason would be when you talk to the powerful circles, or the circles which are in the know, the answer that you get is maybe because the forces that we don't have, they don't tolerate Nawaz Sharif's overtures towards India, Afghanistan, other countries. But having said that, the fact is, despite the fact that Nawaz Sharif has been sacked, he has been removed from power, it is his party that is governing Pakistan right now. And by the looks of it, whatever happens, it is highly unlikely that in the upcoming elections in 2018, any other party will be returned to power except the MNN.
Yeah, actually, and that's what I would like to ask you this. If you remember, like 10, 15 years ago, our friend Mr. Ijaz Haider, when he was working for Daily Times, he started a debate, transition versus revolution, that it was the General Musharraf's time period, and I kind of supported the revolution side, and my point was that, Farrukh, that if I am a political force in Pakistan, and if I am in the government, no matter what, I have to be a subservient of establishment, quote unquote, So, if they are anyways the kingmaker and running the show behind that, to let them go ahead and take it over and do it. So, how you see this thing is now? First of all, I would like to ask you how you comment on this kind of thought, because I feel it, some of the people also argue in the same lines. And I would like you to please teach my audiences that in the future, like you say, that PMLN has only one party which has a more chance to come back in power. How this, if everything is true, how they can be hindered and stopped? Because if they win, then what will happen? Is it keep going on all the time?
Dr. Saab, when you ask about my opinion, I tell you I'm fairly clear about these matters. I think that evolution is the only way in a democracy that change can be brought. When you talk so many revolutions all over the world. They don't, stay for long. Their impact is reversed within 100 years, sometimes even far lesser. And the problem is that since 1947, when this country was born, repeatedly people have thought that revolution maybe is the better idea. And consequently, you have seen that we haven't been able to progress the way we were supposed to. We have destroyed the progress of 70 years to bring about an overnight change that has proven hard to materialize. Compare us with our next door neighbors, the Indians, who have settled for democracy, and they know that no matter what happens, no matter which revolutionary comes, that revolutionary will stay for quite some time, and people will not be able to sack that revolutionary. And he might be an angel, but who knows that when he dies, somebody else comes and he is a total devil. And you won't be able to remove that person as well. That's why India has made this conscious choice, and that's why India has been progressing. This debate has to be settled one day, sir. We have repeatedly seen all, possible form of dictatorship in Pakistan. Nothing was. At least in democracy, I get the chance to sack a government, a sitting government, after every 5 years. And that is exactly a possibility. The problem with the status quo forces, the politicians who are ruling, and we are told that Nawaz Sharif has been a face in politics, has been a factor in politics for 40 years. That is true, sir. But till the time they are made martyrs, or till the time they are, removed from power by force, not through the vote or ballot, they will keep on. When you talk about the forces behind curtain who might be, orchestrating all these developments, well, transformation takes time. There will be forces that have become or were very powerful. They were maybe more powerful than the state. But the state gradually will find a way to counter them, and we will become a total and absolute democracy. Let us hope that day also comes.
So, Farrukh, should we expect that this is the way things will go, and in the short run there is no solution? The political forces should accept the hegemony of establishment, that foreign policy and everything would be run by them, and they will be just become some kind of cheerleader?
Well, Dr. Saab, that is exactly what was the expectation so far from the forces that we. But I tell you, in evolution, although it takes time, if you keep on pushing the limits, you finally reach where you want to. And the point is, so far, the failure of the political forces is not merely political. It is moral to an extent, and it is also a crisis of imagination. They haven't been able to keep up with the propaganda that has been emanating from so many television screens here, showing them as morally bankrupt. Remember, this country is accused of corruption. When that is said, it doesn't mean only politicians are corrupt. Everybody, or people from every walk of life can be accused of that. So politicians have to actually refine their narrative, the way to actually convey it to the masses as well. If they do, I think in the long run, politicians are going to prevail and survive, because in the longer run, if a decision has been made to make the country or develop the country into a democracy, that is what is going to happen. People need and want progress, and they want ownership of their own decisions. So I think that at this moment, situation might be troubling, but we have contended with it for past 7, 8, 10 years, and we can, survive for a couple of more.
Okay, so let's switch to a little bit international politics. Nowadays you see that U.S.-Pakistan relations as usual going up and down, and very very similar thing which is happening. But this time it was coming from very high level. That as you see it in U.S. that most of the key positions are taken over by the retired generals and. The State Department, which is okay to have generals, they are all retired generals, but the thing is that the State Department is a virtual, like a dormancy, went into the virtual dormancy. How you see that Pakistan is going to deal with that situation where there is a force, there is a pressure on Pakistan and so much support for India and all other countries, even they are taking, the American administration taking Indian lines about Kashmir and other places, and especially after Mr. Hafiz Saeed was released by the court. So how you see overall that US policy will be impacting on Pakistan's future?
Right, let me start by discussing Hafiz Saeed. I don't know what exactly happened. Why did they actually decide to let him go? There is an international case against him. I think eventually better sense will prevail and he will come back, or he will be detained. But regarding the relationship between America and Pakistan, sir, I see it other way around. I think that there were too many issues that were behind or under the surface for quite some time. They were simmering for quite some time. And the problem was that there was no way to address that, the relationship between Pakistan and America. Those issues in that relationship were not surfacing. And that's why we were not able to find a rational solution. For example, it is said that Haqqani network is the biggest menace. So that has to be taken out, that has to be dealt. If both sides actually sit on the table and decide that there is a verifiable way, step by step, to go after the growth, of course, intelligence sharing can take place. At this moment, I think that intelligence sharing is taking place, and that's why you might have seen some action against such groups. But when you talk about overall relationship, listening to whatever I was hearing from Donald Trump, from the Secretary of State, from other people, I was actually relieved that these things were finally articulated. When you get these things out of your system, that means eventually you start moving towards a solution. And I tell you one very interesting thing, Dr. Saab. No matter what the world thinks of India, no matter what the world thinks of Pakistan, I tell you at this moment, the Pakistani state is fighting the elements that have been troubling not only Pakistani state, but also neighbors. When you talk about India, that is not happening because somehow these elements are connected to the ruling party there. I'm talking about sectarian terrorism there, and I'm talking about extremist Muslim or Islamist terrorism in Pakistan. In Pakistan, at least there is recognition that we have a problem. In India, you don't have that. That's why India actually is moving in the same trajectory that Pakistan was moving in 1980s. And that is troubling, should be troubling for India. In Pakistan, we have lost 70,000 people to terrorism. We have been fighting it. Everybody is threatened every day. So Pakistan is in a better position to address international concerns and eventually find a solution that pleases everybody. Because in Pakistan, there is this realization that extremism has cost them an arm and a leg. And eventually, we have to find a solution where economy becomes the most important thing. Recently, I'm sure that you have seen the surveys that were conducted by Gallup and others, in which very important. If the federal government can actually, revive the economy and then continue the action against the terrorist organization, I'm sure that Pakistani state and the society are going to be healthier. And the good thing about healthy societies is that they don't become liability for any international partner.
Yeah. If I further ask you in the same lines that about U.S.-Pakistan relations, how you see, because there is a lot of talk about that the U.S. is somewhat nervous about the growth of China, and if you see it, China is very serious about business here. Doing the Gwadar port, because they were kind of creating their west coast now. So how you see it, it would be very important if you kindly give me a little detailed answer of that, because my audience will really like to see some Pakistani intellectual, how they see it. So please, Farrukh, explain us.
Right, Dr. I think that it goes back to the old, the argument about the old mentality versus the new. The old mentality is the siege mentality. The old mentality is the straitjacket of Cold War. So in that, you have to have a game theory where one person's or one team's gain is another's loss. I think with increasing population, with changing circumstances, things are changing, and nations like China and America don't need to be competitors. So this old cycle keeps on reminding the US that you have to contain China, and in order to contain China, India is the best partner, the regional partner that is possible. And then in that situation, China poses the biggest threat to America. I think recently what we saw when Donald Trump actually visited Beijing and China and Asia, at that time a lot of issues were resolved. So I'm not saying that this old perception is not going to survive for long. It is going to perhaps have an impact as well. But the new age belongs to coordination, cooperation, and interdependence. Our problems are mounting when you look at the circumstances all over the world. Your population is increasing beyond any control. Environment is degrading. And then there are so many other challenges that will be posed. The poverty is on the rise as well. So in that situation, I think any person who says that one country has to fight the other are really bonkers. They're out of their mind. At this moment, all countries have to work together. So Pakistan at this moment sits in an ideal situation. Pakistan can work with China as well. Pakistan was actually responsible for helping build bridges back in Yahya Khan's time between the US and China. So that role can be played even now, although the Chinese friends and American friends don't need that kind of help. But the CPEC project, China-Pakistan Economic Project, or corridor, it is inclusive. Invitation has been extended to India. Pakistan used to consider India as its worst enemy, but see that even senior army officers are extending that invitation. The constituency that was thought to be opposed to India's engagement, even they keep on inviting India that instead of fighting Pakistan, they should also join CPEC. So I think when you talk about the Belt and Road Initiative, when you talk about China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, it is a very inclusive kind of exercise. And primarily it is about infrastructure and the capacity to trade. And who doesn't want better trade? America wants it, China wants it, India wants it, Pakistan does also. So those the elements who are totally devoid of any kind of foresight might think that it is going to create some kind of friction between Pakistan and America because Pakistan is working with China. But people who realize that we are living in a new century, a new millennium, And we have to have creative solutions to all the problems. So they are going to not only tolerate, but they are actually going to support the idea. Because 2 years ago, 3 years ago, Pakistan was badly battered. Economy-wise, we thought that we are finished. Every person repeatedly was saying that Pakistan is marginalized and will be finished. But that didn't happen. And this economic project also contributed enormously to, frankly, while China did a lot, I tell you that our American friends and their help has also been vital to the revival of the country. I think we should be grateful. And but honestly, as someone who thinks that circumstances all over the world are changing, I believe that we don't have to actually stay in the Cold War mentality, and we have to move on to the idea of collective security, to interdependence and better future.
Farrukh, let me add something into it. That recently I read a very good book by Dr. Graham Allison. It's the book's name was Destined for War. Is China and America are in the Thucydides trap? And Dr. Graham is kind of building his thesis on this basis that globalization and all these kind of communication age, it really smooths out the transactions, but the primal fault lines among the cultures, it does not impact on that. That stays there. And he gave the example of Peloponnesian War, and then he said that when Sparta was a big power and Athens started growing up, then basically Sparta got nervous and then they got into the fight. Eventually Sparta won the war. In the end, what happens that all Greek culture was destroyed. And he is comparing this situation, asking this question, is US and China getting into the Thucydides trap, what he gave the name of that. So from this point of view, if I look at from that angle of the history, how you see that where we are heading at? Because then it makes sense to me at least, and you are going to correct me on that kindly, that US has a huge concerns about growth of China, and that's why they are even talking about that one belt, one road is the old concept, and new concept is there is no one belt, one road, like one of the high official said in United States. So how do you see that, sir?
Well, sir, regarding Dr. Graham's this statement, his basic argument about cultural fault lines is primarily taken from the book of Huntington. And this is the problem. He also made the same argument. And the problem is, I actually call it Ghost of Huntington. He has died, but his thoughts keep on hunting us even today. I bring your attention to another book that was written something like 40 years ago, or more than 40 years ago, 47 years ago. Alvin Toffler's Future Shock. And in that, the author tells you what kind of future that we have to face. Many of those realities, those predictions have become reality. We are living in the age of artificial intelligence. We are living in the age of robotics and so many other things. The problem at this moment is, sir, there will always be people that keep on dragging you back and who tell you that you have to fight and you have to compete. My biggest problem with Huntington's argument and my problem with Arnold Toynbee's argument that was invoked by Huntington is that the definition of civilization is wrong. I believe that civilization, there is only one civilization, and it is called human civilization. Whether we like it or not, we are destined for the same future. And in that situation, of course, there are going to be cultural differences, but they are not mutually, cultures are not mutually exclusive, and they are not essentially competing. You can have a circumstance where, cultural influences can permeate. When you compare the argument of Dr. Graham or Dr. Huntington, I would actually choose a third argument, and that is Francis Fukuyama's argument that intellectual history back in 1990s, concluded, and now we are trying to reinvent for the sake of politics, and this is my spin on it. We are reinventing old differences just to, keep the industry continue. We don't have to, because that even the defense industry, all the, capacity can be used for so many better reasons if we want to. For example, exploring the space is very important. Colonizing the space. We have visionary people who will realize eventually that at the current rate of population growth, the world will not be inhabitable within another 100 years. Why not start finding other ways to actually invade or colonize space? We are living in the age of science fiction. So whosoever tells me that we have to go back either to 1984 or we have to go to 1950s and 60s, sir, with due respect, I am not going to listen to them, because we didn't even realize that future was actually about to surprise us. And in past 15 years, look what it has done to us already. Most of the jobs all over the world are going away to the machines. So many other things are happening. In that situation, if we think that by only following the Cold War calculus, we are going to survive, I don't think that is going to happen. We need to work together, and there are differences. I tell you, in my view, Fukuyama's worldview is also important, because I think he is right about Western civilization, Western, cultural thought and political thought. I think it is the right philosophy that is going to survive in the longer run. So eventually, you will see China becoming more modern and open to change as well, and you're going to see other countries conforming to that solution as well, provided we take care of the future instead of just staying or living in the past.
Well, it was very nice talking to you, Farrukh. When I start talking to Farrukh Pitafi, I just don't want to stop, but unfortunately we have a limited time. So Farrukh, thank you very much for your time, and we will be in touch if you allow us in the future. And thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, that was all for today, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving holidays. See you again next week in Viewpoint from Overseas. This is your host, Misbah Azam.